2.9 Xbow is one of the most free-to-play options for you guys to play. It's a really easy deck to level up, and once you actually learn how to play the deck, it is very deadly. That being said, this deck is also one of the harder decks to learn, mostly because the playstyle of this deck is really different from most of the other decks in this game. Therefore, when you're still learning the deck, there is a lot of room for error, and there are tons of tiny or major mistakes that can really ruin the outcome of your matches. Hey guys, Legendaray here, and today I'm going to be listing out 10 mistakes that you do not want to make while running 2.9 Expos. Some of these are just small micro interactions, while others are major game plan related strategy. Of course, as with most of my other pro tips videos, I've had Crafter to help me generate and proofread this list. So Crafter just started a YouTube channel. I'll be sure to link it down below for you guys to check out some really nice Expo gameplay. Also, before I get into the video, if you could please leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Also, go check me out on Instagram and Twitter, links down below. And if you'd like to support me in game, feel free to use code Legendaray in the shop. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the list. Number 1. OverDefending Expos. So when you're playing 2.9, it may be very tempting to try and protect that Expo with all of your elixir and defend it as best as possible. And while sometimes that may be the move, most of the times it actually is not. This is usually not a good option for two main reasons. The first is if you overdefend your Expos, then you're going to be really short on elixir. By trying to use all of your units to try and defend that Expo and take out any opposing units, you actually leave yourself very vulnerable to any opposite lane push, leaving yourself scrambling to react to even the smallest of pushes. The second reason is that this deck is a cycle deck, so sometimes it is good to actually let your Expos die, because with the super fast cycle, you can often cycle back to a second Expo before your opponents can actually cycle back to their Expo counters. Number 2. Staying in the same lane. So while in some matchups it is generally recommended to stay in the same lane, it should always be an option for you to switch to the opposite lane. Especially in matchups such as Graveyard and Minor Control, it is almost essential that you are constantly switching lanes so that your opponents cannot get all of their damage onto a single tower. In fact, even when I am facing Graveyard, if I have a tower down to maybe half health, I will still switch lanes just so that he'll have to spend elixir in that opposite lane. In addition, against matchups such as Golem Beatdown, it is very useful to play that Expo opposite lane, even if you have a ton of damage on one tower already, just to try and get your opponents to spend elixir in that lane, meaning that they can't end up supporting their own push as effectively. Number 3. Slowing your cycle. So this deck is a cycle deck, meaning that you have to capitalize on that fast cycle to cycle back to all of your useful cards. Now, a mistake that a lot of newer Expo players will make is, for example, just straight up playing that Expo and Tesla at the bridge whenever you have the chance. When you play that Expo and then play that Tesla, you're slowing your cycle by so much. As you know, when you play a card, you have to play 4 more cards after that to get back to it. And when you play the Expo and the Tesla, that is 10 elixir you're playing while only advancing your cycle by 1 card. On the other hand, if you played something such as Skeletons and then an Ice Spirit and then a Log, that's also 10 elixir. But guess what? You've already played 3 cards, and you're just 1 card away from cycling back to a second Expo. Keep this in mind, especially in single elixir. When you're playing those offensive Expos, I usually will not support the Expo with a Tesla or a Fireball, and instead, I'll try and defend with the Skeletons, Ice Spirit, Log, Ice Golem, and Archers to try and maximize my cycle speed. Number 4. Wasting cycle cards. On the topic of cycle cards, these Skeletons and Ice Spirit may seem like just, cards that make the cycle faster, but they also require a lot of skill to play properly. Skeleton and Ice Spirit have so many different interactions that if you actually get good at playing those cards, can be very very effective. So when you're playing Xbow, you have to make sure that you play the skeletons and Ice Spirit in order to maintain your cycle, but also to try and get as much value as possible. There are so many unique placements that you can learn that can get you so many positive elixir trades, and rarely will I actually just play my skeletons or my Ice Spirit simply just to cycle. There's always a purpose, may that be to get chip damage or to actually freeze a unit or kite things opposite lane. Number 5, playing too defensively. Another mistake that I notice a lot of Xbow players will do is that they're playing way too defensively. And while, yeah, you don't want to be spamming Xbow at the bridge the moment that you can, you also don't want to be too passive. Again, like I mentioned earlier, when your opponents are trying to build up a big push, it can be very, very useful to actually play defense with offense and play that Xbow on offense in the opposite lane. This will force your opponent to spend elixir opposite lane, meaning that they can't support your own push. It's a very textbook example, but it shows that you actually have to play offense in order to play defense effectively, and you can't just completely rely on your archers and Tesla to actually defend effectively. Because if you take a look at all the support cards, they're actually more on the fragile side of the Clash Royale card spectrum. Number 6, forgetting optimal building placements. So there are a lot of different building placements for every single situation when you're playing Xbow. I'm going to go over a few of them in a little bit, but knowing the optimal building placements for every single matchup can be critical to making your matchups a lot easier to deal with. So let's quickly go over a few of the most important Xbow as well as Tesla placements that there are. So starting off with the Tesla, one of the most effective Tesla placements is in the center, 3 tiles from the bridge. The reason I love this placement so much is because it can pull most units into the center, and in addition to that, it also can offer offensive value when you play your Xbow on the inner tile of the bridge like this. As you can see, when the opponent's units walk up to the Xbow, the Tesla will also be activated, meaning that you can get more offensive value as well. This Tesla and Xbow placement can also drag tanks to the opposite lane. As you can see right here, there's a big golem push coming down the left lane, and by simply using an inside Xbow placement as well as a center Tesla, you can actually drag the golem all the way to the opposite lane, making it a much easier job to take care of all of the supporting units behind the golem. Against the Lava Loon deck, this inside Xbow placement combined with a bit of a modified Tesla placement can also pull the balloon opposite lane, leaving the Lava Hound vulnerable and very, very easy to take out. When playing the Xbow on defense, there are 3 major placements that I will be using. The first is a center Xbow placement. I find myself actually rarely using this one, so I won't go too much into it. However, when I am playing an Xbow in the center, I'll usually play it 3 tiles from the bridge closer to the tower with more health. This way, if the opponent is running Fireball, then they won't be able to clip that Fireball onto your weaker tower. The second placement that I will use is the anti-poison and anti-earthquake placements. There are actually 2 different placements for this one. The placement that's a little higher is going to be used in more offensive cases, and the placement that's a little bit lower is going to provide a little bit more defensive value. This placement is super useful because not only does it dodge the earthquake and dodge the poisons, but it also leaves room in the center for you to play a well-placed Tesla. The final placement that I'm going to highlight is a placement 1 tile from the King Tower. Now this placement is very useful against balloon decks. As you can see, if I manage to get an Xbow towards the opposite lane 1 tile from the King Tower, and there's a balloon push coming in, I can use a Tesla to drag the balloon towards the center, and then once that Tesla gets taken out, the balloon will head towards the Xbow and then towards the King Tower. Getting an activated King's Tower against balloon matchups is very, very useful and is definitely something that you should try and do. Number 7, not knowing spell damage. Spell damage is one of the most important things in 2.9 Xbow. In fact, with this super fast cycle, as well as triple elixir in the last minute of the match, fireball cycling is a very, very deadly option. Therefore, it's very useful to know a lot of your spell damage. And I mean, yeah, there's only the fireball and the log, but you also should try and memorize how much damage those spells do in combination. For example, at tournament stage, standard, a fireball does 201 damage, and a log does 84. That means a single fireball and a single log will do 285 damage. Then, if you're like me, I'm too lazy to actually memorize the exact numbers after this, but it is good to have a general idea of how much damage your spells will do up to 3 rounds of fireballs. So let's round that 285 down to 250, meaning that 3 rounds of fireball logs can do about 750 damage to your opponent's crown towers at tournament standard. The exact number is actually 855 damage, but again, I'm lazy and I don't like to actually memorize the numbers. You can definitely do that if you want to. Number 8, playing your archers and Tesla last. Now this one is a little bit more of a situational tip, because obviously if you are in a bad cycle, then you will want to play your Tesla and your archers at the very last second possible. But when you can, it's actually very useful to play your Tesla or play your archers as your first play on a defense. So for example, if your opponent has a golem push coming in, it's very useful to play that Tesla first and then play those archers second. This way, you can actually cycle back to a second Tesla and a second pair of archers. Most golem decks will have a way to deal with the Tesla, may that be the poison or the lightning, and as soon as that Tesla gets taken out, then you can go ahead and plop down that second Tesla, plop down a second set of archers, and then you will be good to go. Obviously, not every situation will be as ideal as that, but that general idea is very, very useful, and why a lot of Expo players will actually just, preemptively cycle a Tesla in the center, because they know that they can cycle to a second Tesla when they actually need it. Number 9, not protecting your archers. Your archers are one of the most important units on your defense. Being the only actual defensive troop card, it's very important that you are making sure that those archers get as much value as possible. Now those archers are really fragile, so one of the most important cards that you can use to protect those archers is going to be that Ice Golem. For just 2 elixir, it offers a ton of tankage and it buys those archers just a little bit more time to get more damage. In addition, Ice Spirit and Skeletons, when used effectively, can also buy as much time as possible, while also helping you cycle back to a second pair of archers. Number 10, not formulating a game plan. Now this one is kind of the biggie here. Against different matchups, there are widely different game plans that you have to adopt in order to take those matchups down. For example, against the beatdown deck, you're going to be waiting for a 4 elixir card for you to play Xbow in the opposite lane. Against Graveyard, you're going to be constantly switching lanes until you make a huge breakthrough on one of them while spreading out your opponent's damage on your own tower. And against Hog Rider, you're going to be saving that Tesla for the Hog while constantly cycling those Expos on offense. So as you can see, when you're approaching a match while playing 2.9 Expo, it's important to actually know how to play each and every matchup. So I'll go ahead and link down below a video that I made a while ago, also featuring Crafter, where I went over a very brief strategy over a large amount of matchups using Expo. It's a pretty well-rounded guide, so of course, link to that will be down in the description. So there we go, the 10 biggest mistakes that you can make while running 2.9 Expo. Of course, this deck again takes a while to learn, and a lot of the times you'll notice that playing this deck is quite different from playing any other deck in the game. Hopefully you guys learned something from this episode. Again, huge thanks to Crafter. I'll link his channel and social media down below for you guys to check out. But unfortunately guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members. You guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below, as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.